So, Bu Elvia, are we going to start now or we will wait until 9 sharp?
No, yeah, just another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
Okay. Just inform you if we're having a live for YouTube right now. So
Yes.
So, Bu Elvia, are we
Thank
going to
you.
start now or we will wait until 9 sharp?
No, yeah, just another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
okay. Just inform you if we're having a live for YouTube right now. So
Yes.
So, Bu Elvia, are we
Thank
going to
you.
start now or we will wait until 9 sharp?
No, yeah, just another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
okay. Just inform you if we're having a live for YouTube right now. So
Yes.
So, Bu Elvia, are we
Thank
going to
you.
start now or we will wait until 9 sharp?
No, yeah, just another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
just inform you if we're having a live for YouTube right now. So
Yes.
So, Bu Elvia, are we
Thank
going to
you.
start now or we will wait until 9 sharp?
No, yeah, just another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
Okay.
just inform you if we're having a live for YouTube right now. So
Yes.
So, Bu Elvia, are we
Thank
going
you.
to start now or we will wait until 9 sharp?
No, yeah, just another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sharp on time, okay? Diva?
already
Yeah.
AM.
Yep. You can start, Diva.
Okay, please start Diva.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes. Sharp
Okay.
on time, okay? Diva?
So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Diva, and I am from Universitas Indonesia. I will be your host here in this third international online seminar of AJCE. First of all, I'd like to introduce AJCE to you. So, AJCE, or ASEAN Journal of Community Engagement, is an organization in Universitas Indonesia that publish journal related to community engagement. And this online seminar is dedicated for, but not limited to, researchers, students, scientists, and community who are working on community empowerment, reporting on engaged research, community-based research, action research, and community services, as well as improving the knowledge and practice in the field of purposive community engagement. Today, we have Dr. Elvia Shauki from Universitas Indonesia and the University of South Australia. She is one of the editors of AJCE, and she will be our moderator for this international seminar. We have three distinguished speakers today. They are Professor Puspes Kumar from University of Hyderabad, India. The second speaker is Taneshwar Busal from University of Canberra, Australia. Last but not least, we will have Dr. Hassan Raza from Missouri State University, Missouri, United States of America. Now, I will let Elvia to lead this online seminar. Please, Elvia.
Thank you. So, thank you, Diva, and welcome to our distinguished speakers. Also, welcome to our attendees. And this is our third online seminars on community engagements. We do have very distinguished, and we are very honored to have distinguished speakers from three different regions. And these are just a kind of rundown for our event. So we start sharp at 9:05, and that is me as the moderator to read the CV of our three distinguished speakers. Also, we will start to have this speech led by Professor Pushpesh Kumar from University of Hyderabad, and that is around 20 minutes, followed with the questions and answers about 15 minutes. So in total, one speaker will talk about 35 minutes. And then we do have the next speaker, and that is Tanesh, and that is talking about the title on participatory local governance in developing countries. Also, Tanesh will have 20 minutes of his speech and followed by questions and answers for 15 minutes. The last one, we will have a very honorable speaker from Missouri University, Missouri State University, and that is Hassan Raza, PhD. Also, we will have 20 minutes on his lecture and also followed by questions and answers. We will wrap up these questions. So what we're going to happen is that attendees could raise questions during that questions and answers. But if you still have some nagging questions at the end of the sessions, you may raise the questions at the end of the sessions, and we do have about 5 minutes to wrap up. Also to wrap up any other nagging questions. So that's the first one. The second ones I would like to introduce to you and also to read a very, very brief curriculum vitae of our three distinguished speakers. So these are the curriculum vitae of our three distinguished speakers. So the first one is Professor, if we look at this, is the first one is Professor Pushpesh Kumar. He has this research stream on queer movement, queer pedagogy, as well as on the religions and queer issues, Marxisms and queer theory, alternative families, and kinships. He was invited by the Asia Center, Syracuse University, to hear his views on queering Indian sociology back in 2017. He has been a visiting fellow at the Department of Anthropology, London School of Economics, LSE, Department of Sociology, as well as in Delhi School of Economics. He received an award from the Srinivas Memorial Prize for Young Sociologists back in 2017. His research area a lot about with men and feminisms, economic and political weekly special volume of men and feminisms in India back in 2015. He has a forthcoming editing book from Routledge, and that is entitled Sexuality, Injunctions, and Queer Existence in Contemporary India. At the moment, he serves International Advisory Committee of the Journal of Community Development, being published from the UK and Ireland. So for sure, you will hear a lot of thoughts, a lot of critical perspective with regard to this topic that is going to give to us. Second speaker is Dr. Taneshwar Busal. He's from Institute of Governance and Policy Analysis, IGPA, a governance research center at the University of Canberra in Australia. At the moment, Tanesh is in Kathmandu collecting data for his research study. Tanesh is an honorary professional associate at the Institute of Governance and Policy Analysis, IGPA, a governance research center at the University of Canberra in Australia. He also published several articles and book chapters in the field of participatory governance in developing countries with emphasis on citizens' participations. So for sure, this is the area of interest that you would like to hear of his thoughts. Policy making, especially in a country in Nepal. He got his master degree at Tribhuvan University in Nepal, and then again another master at the University of Potsdam in Germany. He got his PhD in the field of public administrations, public management, and governance. He also, like Professor Pushpesh, received a lot of awards, fellowships, and scholarships from different institutions. Our third speaker is Dr. Muhammad Hassan Raza. He is an associate assistant professor at the Department of Childhood Education and Family Studies at Missouri State University in the U.S. his PhD. He got it from with regard to the family studies from Montclair State University in the United States. He has received certified family life educator. Dr. Raza teach this teaching interest, that is his teaching interest. A lot of them are related to relationship in today's families, children and families, and so on. Primary research is on work, family balance, and working mothers in the United States. Secondary research on community engagements and cross-cultural research. We are very, very honored to have all of the three distinguished speakers who have done a lot in the area. And now we would like to give the chance to the first speaker, Professor Pushpesh Kumar. You have a total of 20 minutes, Professor, to talk, and we
Yeah.
will remind you if time is so close by with the 20 minutes. So times is yours, and you can share your screen now. You have the control, or otherwise I can control it for you, and that is the one here. Okay, so can you see
Yeah,
the
you
slides
can.
clearly?
Yeah,
Yes.
I
And
can
let me
see.
know, yes, let me know if you want me to move to another slides.
Yeah. So please move to the next. Uh, so this is the title of my presentation, which is a struggle for substantive justice and community development, transgender subjects and new liberal state in India. And my main argument is that about the struggle of transgender communities, about their basic developmental rights and substantive justice since 2014, and this state's response since then. And as I have titled that it is a neoliberal state in India, and what way state is responding. So why I have chosen 2014? The point of choosing 2014 is because of the intensification and public visibility of trans mobilization due to recognition of transgender as legal citizens of the state through the landmark Supreme Court judgment in 2014. This not only formally recognized the transgender as citizens but extended substantive rights to this constituency, recognizing their multiple and intersectional marginalities historically instituted through colonial intervention via law and surveillance and implantation of transphobia and homophobia by the colonial governance. The citizenship, so this was one citizenship right. The another citizenship right was further reaffirmed through reading down of section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. You can move the slide. um, yeah, the Indian Penal Code in September 2009. This regressive section was introduced by colonial regime in 1861. Please move the slide. Uh, so what is the background of this coming up of Nal? It is the Supreme Court judgment is also called Nalsa judgment. And why the Nalsa judgment come? What was the background? The background, we can go back historically to the introduction of Section 377 of Indian Penal Code in 1861, that was legislated by the colonial regime to forbid and hence criminalize the carnal intercourse against the order of nature. It was ingrained in the Judeo-Christian religious morality that loathed non-procreative sex. Please move the slide. Um, yeah, so these communities were under repression, under oppression till up till now, till 2018. In fact, when till 2014 and 2018, we can say legally they were not recognized as citizens, etc. So what happened in the early 1990s? The draconian law, which was enforced by colonial regime, earned the attention of civil society working around HIV/AIDS, as it was perceived to impede HIV/AIDS outreach for vulnerable, specifically those who were engaging in sexual acts that were criminalized under the law. So the first movement to repeal the Section 377 was initiated by an organization called AIDS Bhedbhav Birodhi Andolan in 1991. They also came up with a historic publication, Less Than Gay, which was a citizens report pointing out that what harm the section is doing to certain constituencies of the population. Can you move the slide, please? Uh, so many transgender women and men who have sex with men. Many transgender women do sex work. They were perceived as target groups of intervention by the international NGO. And this was the time of globalization. 1990s was also the time of globalization and liberalization of Indian economy. And one phase of globalization and liberalization was entering of quote unquote the humanitarian NGOs who were trying to intervene in the arena of HIV/AIDS, because this was the time that India was considered to be the third most uh, mm, the incidence of AIDS was too high at that time, and thus third most biggest countries in the globe, where you can witness the HIV/AIDS, the incidence of HIV/AIDS was too high because of these NGOs recognize the unsafe sexual practices, and these unsafe sexual practices are due to illegality of homosexuality, as we said, due through the colonial law, which was continuing in post-colonial times, in post-colonial India up till now, as well as the socio-economic marginalities on account of caste, class, sexuality, and gender. So the National AIDS Control Organization, or NACO, and international NGOs working around HIV/AIDS, they advocated the rights of these groups. Moreover, the illegality did not allow NGOs and NACO, National AIDS Control Organization, to smoothly carry out the HIV/AIDS related work, because these people were always underground. They were hiding because they were illegal citizens. Though presumably applicable to both homosexuals and heterosexual, this Section 377 is was a complete prohibition on sexual act engaged by LGBTI community, making them at greater risk of acquiring and transmitting HIV infection due to high risky behaviors and insufficient power for decision making to protect themselves from infection. So this was the whole background, that even the government agencies like National AIDS Control Organization were finding it difficult to make interventions and carry out their HIV/AIDS related activities to work around these people, and they make an enabling environment in certain ways for these communities to come up, the trans communities also to come up and speak for themselves. Please move the slide. Uh, so it was the one international NGO which has a branch in Delhi, NAS Foundation. So NAS Foundation versus Union of India. In 2001, the NAS Foundation filed a case to read down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. Ironically, this legislative purpose is in complete contrast to averments of the national organization NACO's affidavit. So the NACO is asking that you liberalize the law so that it will smoothen the process of working around this community, working with these communities. But what was happening, because of the enforcement of law, the government agencies were also finding it difficult to make, and it was simultaneously pushing these communities underground, making risky sexual behavior go unnoticed and unaddressed. The report of expert committee on size estimation of population with high risk estimated that there are 25 lakh MSM, men who have sex with men, who are affected by who they, and a substantial chunk of this community is affected with HIV and AIDS. Please move the slide. Um, so the members of these high-risk groups are most reluctant to reveal their sexual identity due to fear of law enforcement agency, and this keeps a large section unreachable and hence pushes cases of infection underground, making it very, very difficult for the public health workers to access the very individuals who need them most. The civil society, so this civil society enabled an environment for communities to vocalize their legitimacy, deserving the attention and intervention from the state. Uh, okay, please move ahead. So the Ministry of Social Justice and Expert Committee in 2013, and they constituted a committee, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, which included academicians, researchers, NGO representative, community members, to find out ways and means to mainstream transgender community. The committee met 4 times between November 2030 to January 2014 and made recommendations ranging from addressing the stigma, discrimination, to sensitization of public servants and police, to specific health needs of transgender community and survey of the community with self involvement of the community. Please go ahead. So in 2014, the Supreme Court delivered a judgment following a writ petition filed by National Legal Service Authority of India in September 2012 and supported by prominent transgender activists like Lakshmi Narayan. Please move the slide. So what was the state response? But state was not very happy with the NALSA judgment because, as I have titled the presentation, that it was a substantive kind of provisions which is laid out in the verdict. It not only talks about the stigma and discrimination, it talks about how you can empower the community, what are the specific needs of the community, which I will sort of read out. So, but hardly after 5 months, the ministry, the government started raising certain questions. So there was a provision that these communities should be included under the other backward classes, this category. Then the National Commission for Backward Classes Act. Under that act, the government started, the central government started questioning the Supreme Court verdict that how can you pass such kind of a judgment that these people should be brought under other backward class categories, etc., etc. And government, it seems, was not very happy with the substantive arguments made in the or carried out in the NALSA verdict or the Supreme Court judgment of 2014 extending citizenship to the transgender communities. Can we move? So what was the substantive rights within NASA verdict? Understanding rights to personal autonomy and self-determination under the Article 21 of the Constitution, the court observed that the gender to which a person belongs will be determined by the person concerned. So there was a self-determination of gender. The decision recognizes the rights of person to identify in a gender which what the person relates to, that is male, female, third gender, irrespective of the medical intervention. Please move ahead. The court emphatically noted that the dignity cannot be realized if a person grows up and live in a gender which they do not identify. So the gender is forced, and the Supreme Court is saying gender is not biological, but gender is cultural, which was a very, very revolutionary kind of a statement. The implication of NALSA are far-reaching. It is attached to the third gender. Transgender persons should be able to enjoy free citizenship. A person's sense of gender now matches with their official identity without any certificate from a doctor or having gone sex reassignment surgery. As the court clarified that any insistence on sex reassignment surgery for declaring one's gender is immoral and illegal. The decision will go a long way in stopping egregious practices of stripping. Earlier, the police used to strip the transgender to see whether the body is a trans or not, or it is fake or whatever. So all these practices will be stopped. Please move ahead. The court issued a series of directions to central and state governments, including granting legal recognition to a person's self-identified gender, either male or female or third gender, treating transgender persons as socio-educationally backward class of citizen, and extending reservations in education, employment, providing separate HIV serosurveillance for the transgender person and appropriate health facilities, amongst others, clear and strong articulation of autonomy of self-determination. Please move ahead. Following the judgment, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment drafted transgender bill in 2015 and invited comments, suggestions and reflection from the community and civil society to be submitted to Ghazala Minal, who was the Secretary of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, by 16 January 2016. Please move ahead. Yeah, so there is a collective called Sampurna, which is an online collective of transgender who developed a critique of transgender bill, and other civil society groups working around the area and the community member themselves. And Sampurna said that what has happened, there is an omission of intersex person. In its critique of the draft bill, Sampurna in January 2016 said that the omission of intersex person and communities from the bill, and they should be renamed, the bill should be renamed as the Right of Transgender and Intersection Person Bill. It did recommended the transgender intersex certification by the authorities, the community, which would lead to setting up of gatekeepers and power brokers at multiple levels. So they were yeah, in the bill of 2015, they have said that the district magistrate will certify whether you are a transgender or not, or male or female. So the use of no, and the Sampurna also recommended the use of non-pathologizing diagnostic framework of trans and intersex communities, because if you go to the medical establishment basically pathologizes the body of the trans communities. So it asked for a non-pathologizing diagnostic framework based on this based on certain international standards. Okay, please go ahead. In Sampurna's critique of the bill, it mentioned that health is a huge issue and trans and intersex people, and hence a separate chapter on health be incorporated into the bill that fully addresses the trans and intersex health care, and not as general health care of the communities, both the general and specific needs, because the trans communities, and if they undergo SRS, sex reassignment surgery, or intersex person right from their childhood and beginning, they need a specific kind of health attention, and in a transphobic kind of hospital and medical establishment, this there should be a separate chapter should be added in the bill of 2015, which the government came up with to specifically address the health issues of the community. Because it was already laid out in the Supreme Court verdict, but the government is not honoring the Supreme Court verdict. So Sampurna critique of the bill is reiterating and asking, appealing the government to add a separate chapter on health. The draft only talk about awareness raising about transgender. The critique of Sampurna emphasized that more responsibilization of state through formulating, and so just by spelling out that there should be awareness, there should be awareness, but how that will be implemented, there has to be certain budgetary allocation, and Sampurna is saying that there is no budgetary allocation, so there has to be more responsibilization of the state. The community should be treated as socio-economically backward, and affirmative action be sought in education and employment. Please move ahead. To remove the framework of rehabilitation of transgender person, discriminatory and borrowed from outdated. So it's at the discretion of the government that the transgender person can be sent to the rehabilitation center, or at the behest of the parent or whatever. So they asked to remove this rehabilitation center and let the trans person decide what they want to do. Sensitization program on transgender intersex communities should be incorporated into the syllabus. Medical leave should be granted to sex reassignment surgery to those people who are into government jobs. Please move ahead. Amendment of sexual harassment at workplace to include transgender and intersex person. So there is a sexual harassment at workplace law for women, but it is not addressing to the transgender and intersex people, and they are also harassed at workplace. So that should be incorporated and made a subject of medical education as well. Gender affirming procedure or sex reassignment procedures, counseling, surgery, hormone therapy should be made free, because the trans communities, most of them are very poor. Hostel, helpline and emergency services be made available. Budgetary allocation to implement the provisions within the bill. So there is no budgetary provision within the government bill, and the community is emphasizing that there has to be specific budgetary and that's why I have titled it as substantive justice. So they're demanding for substantive justice. The establishment of state and national transgender commission, censor on negative portrayal of transgender intersex person in media, fast track special courts, specific sensibilities within human rights commission, and prison system establishment for trans needs. Please move the slide. Uh, so 2016 bill of trans. So the government, in response to this critique, come up with another bill, which is called 2016 bill of transgender rights, which was again a more regressive version of the community response. Please move ahead. So you see that how transgender communities are pushing for more and more progressive kind of and more demanding substantive justice based on the Supreme Court judgment, but the state or the government is shying away from it and introducing one after the other most regressive version of the bill, and which is leading to intensification of the movement of trans communities in India in 2015 and again in 2016. Please move ahead. And which is still continuing. So Sampurna, in its critique, again it mentioned it a dangerous form of tokenism. So Sampurna is a collective of trans communities, online collective of trans communities, and very active members who are very politically very active, and they develop a very critical radical critique of any policies related to trans communities. So the definitional, so the Sampurna said this time the government has done the definitional damage to transgender communities and intersex people. Uh, the previous draft has mentioned that a person has the right of self-determination of one's gender as male, female, or transgender. But the 2016 bill eliminates the option of identification as either male or female, and the bill reinforces the injurious stereotypes about transgender person. According to the draft, a transgender person is one who is neither wholly male nor female, a combination of male or female, neither female nor male. So state is trying to lay out the category how to define trans bodies and trans communities and transgender. But when the Supreme Court is talking about self-determination, so whatever little element of self-determination was there was also erased in the 2016 bill. Please move ahead. Please go ahead in the slide. Huh. So even though NALSA judgment has remained far from being implemented, the principle of self-determination and its
Professor
broad,
Kumar, just a
yeah,
very quick reminder. You do have 2 minutes to wrap
okay,
up.
fine.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, so there were a lot of regressive things. Again, it led to the intensification of the trans activity, trans political politicization of trans communities, and the critiques were developed and demanding for again substantive justice. Then the government, continued. There was a parliamentary committee which met, and after the individual deposition in front of the parliamentary committee, the parliamentary committee again came up with certain suggestions to the government and made into very substantive justice, which was brought out by Sampurna, incorporating many of these provisions. But the government stuck to its gun, and in 2018 there was a parliament meeting around this, and the government finally passed the Transgender Act in 2019, which is also called 2019 Act. And again, it could not incorporate many of the substantive demands of the communities, because the substantive demands, whether education, employment, health provisions in health and education, and separate demands of the trans communities, etc., will involve lot of budgetary provisions, lot of follow-up, but at the same time state becomes very very repressive, state becomes very very surveillant, etc. And then again the transgender rules have come up now, and the trans communities are not very happy with that, and many community members have again filed petitions in the Supreme Court asking for more and more firm and substantive provisions to be incorporated, and not only incorporated but to be implemented by the government. And there has to be more and more responsibilization of the government, and the government should ensure that these things are implemented, etc.,
Mm.
etc. So I
Okay.
will stop here. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Professor Kumar, we do have several questions, which Diva is going to help me to share the questions. I'm just going to stop the share. Diva, can you upload the questions?
Yes.
Um, Maybe, Professor Kumar, if I could propose to you, if possible, maybe we will convert your PowerPoint slides into PDF file and we will send it to the attendees because there are some slides that were not discussed earlier. So do you give an approval for us to disseminate your slides? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, but it should not be published offline and online, as I've said,
Yes, yes,
because
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, just for the attendees who are interested
yeah,
to have
yeah, that's
copies
true.
of your slides.
That's
Okay,
true.
good.
That's true.
So we do have four questions here. So, and we
Hmm.
do have a maximum of now 13 minutes to answer and address these questions. It's
So
really
the
up to you which one you want to choose.
what extent is the development of children's community in the future? I could not understand this first question. What the person is trying to ask, Malik.
Yeah.
So the question is not very clear. How
Mas Azhar, can you open the speaker for Pak Malik?
Wait a second.
Maybe he can clarify the questions. Otherwise, you can address the next questions first, and then maybe we give the chance to Pak Malik later on.
okay, the next question is, how can Asian countries be integrated with each other and remain relevant in facing globalization while each country has its own problems such as decline of democracy and human rights
Yeah,
issue?
or maybe we can just
Yeah, so this is not very directly addressing what I have spoken about. This is a larger policies issues in the international arena, and at this moment, I may not be able to answer this question. Yeah,
Okay.
this is a different kind of a question, not related to my talk. The third question: there are how many social levels of humans are there? How so that the social level of society in a country can be done? Can you ask this speaker,
Yeah.
this person, to clarify the question again?
Okay. So first, Pak Malik, Mas Azhar, have you had the chance to let Pak Malik talk?
I don't have a chance for Malik to speak because it is question from YouTube.
Ah, okay.
It is
And
question
how
from
about
YouTube.
for the third one? Lintas? Mbak Lintas, is that Mbak?
There are how
uh,
many social levels of humans? What does it mean?
Hmm. And how
okay,
about
okay.
Lintas? Is it coming from YouTube?
I think it's also coming from YouTube book because I
Hmm.
got this question from the Google form.
Ah, okay, okay. And how about the fourth one, Professor Kumar?
According to previous explanation, can those process step be implemented in? Okay, so this Hasbia Rizki,
Yeah,
he or she, I don't,
I think
yeah.
maybe.
it's he.
Okay, he.
It's a
Okay.
male, yeah.
So Rizki is asking that according to previous explanation, can those process steps be implemented in Indonesia? Yes, I think the Supreme Court judgment, which is called Nansa verdict, extending citizenship rights and substantive, developmental rights to the trans communities in India can definitely be replicated elsewhere, anywhere in the globe. There are certain problematic stances which the community are critiquing, but most of the provisions which are laid out, and I have read out many of these provisions, are very useful, very empowering, and very humanitarian, and also giving dignity and justice to the community, and involve certain socio-economic entitlements, and economic entitlements are very important. I think they can be replicated and used and implemented in many other contexts. And at the same time, the NASA judgment is borrowing from many other international contexts, so it's both ways, it flows both ways. So I think definitely it can be utilized, it can be enforced, it can be implemented.
Okay, good. Diva, do we still have any other questions coming from YouTube or coming from Google Forms and
Uh,
in the chat box of our
okay.
Zoom?
I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna check it on the Google form first.
Yeah, sure. Um, Professor Kumar, do you still have some wrap up? This is very useful for us. For me, this is my first time that I just realized it how we struggle with this substantive justice in community development, especially for those who are the minority one. And this is really a new thoughts for us. And never knew and never realized that we are really have kind of similar problems in our country too.
Yeah.
Very good insights. Do you want to wrap up or to give some conclusions out of your presentations?
Yeah, basically, as you look at my title, I'm also talking about the neoliberal state. So, what is happening since 1990s? The economies are opening up. They are going from liberalization, but they are also going from a structural adjustment policy. So, there are budgetary cuts on many things, austerity measures, which is globally applicable, right? So, what is happening that government is spending less and less on social sectors, so that the new communities, when they are making claims, it is also becoming difficult for the government, which is going for massive privatization.
Mm,
And as Wendy Brown, which is one of the political thinkers, is talking about, even the democracy is marketized. So
mm,
everything is offered to the private parties, and private parties are also looking for profit. And in this context, it becomes very, very difficult to address many of the issues of substantive justice. But at the same time, this dialectic goes on, between this, and that's how the role of social movements becomes very, very significant. And the trans movement at the moment is going intensifying and becoming very, very strong because of the COVID situation. It has little decline because many of the trans people now don't have access to net, community are not meeting face to face. Otherwise, they are always ready to fight in Indian context, for example. And many of the intelligentsia group has come up from the trans communities itself. Some of them are very highly educated, very articulate. Many collectives are being formed, and they are asking new question to the government. And the transgender communities are connecting to other marginalized communities, Dalits, Adivasis, and working class, and many other communities, and they are trying to form larger collectives to fight their battles. And they have gone against, so government is accommodating some of the demands, step by step. So I think the role of social movement, even in the neoliberal times, becomes very, very important as a pressure group, and that can create certain change, certain transformation. Yeah.
do you think with the COVID-19 things gets more challenging in terms of the substantive justice for these minority groups? Do you think?
Definitely, definitely. As you know
Mm,
that most of these community members are poor, and
mm,
as far as the trans women are concerned and Hijra communities are concerned, most of them eke out their livelihood by
mm,
selling sex. They
mm,
are sex workers and
mm,
begging.
mm,
So begging and sex work both have been curbed, and
mm,
the government do not have enough plans to sort of implement and empower these communities. So this the community have mobilized themselves, and through raising funds and through appealing to NGOs and civil society groups, international civil society groups, they have mobilized funds, and community leaders are distributing food and clothes and other kind of things. So COVID-19 situation is posing a lot of questions, and now many of them have come back to street to do sex work, which is
mm,
sometimes very, very dangerous in this situation. But they are
mm,
saying, when there's nothing to eat and you have to feed your empty belly, and many of their families are dependent on their income, etc., for education, their kids, sorry, their siblings and many other people of their family members. So they are coming back to street, and many of them have turned online, so they are doing online sex work, which is very,
mm,
very safe in their understanding. But still, it poses a lot of challenges. Many of these communities eke out their livelihood through certain performances, and these
mm,
performances have been stopped during COVID situation.
mm,
And so it is being very difficult for the community, and very many of them are HIV AIDS, afflicted with HIV AIDS, and
mm.
some of them accessing the medicine, healthcare, etc., etc., is becoming very, very important. So there are a lot many things which need to be addressed as far as these minority communities are concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Kumar. A lot of insightful for me. I learn, I always learn some new things, and that is really good for our research. And
Yeah, I think
so,
when I write the entire paper and send it to you, you can find more data and more
yeah,
concrete information, and
sure.
also theoretical perspective, which I'm sort of trying to incorporate and try to
Okay,
analyze. Yeah,
okay, good. So we thank you so much for the
yeah,
insights,
yeah,
informations.
yeah.
It's very insightful for us. Now we come to the second speaker, Dr. Tanesh Bushal. So you do have 20 minutes to talk, and then another 15 minutes as a questions and answers. Time is yours, Dr. Tanesh. So you can share your files. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Elvia, for the wonderful introduction of myself, of course. I would like to welcome all of you showing interest to listen to me and perhaps engaged with me on my research. So this is indeed an extraordinary privilege to share my thoughts on participatory governance in developing countries with, I think, now about 100 plus viewers on YouTube. Before I begin, I want to highlight the fact that the forthcoming 20 minutes will not be sufficient to explain each and every aspects of participatory governance in developing countries, which clearly means that I need to summarize many of the recent research on this particular topic. Um, what happened? Is that okay? Yes. So these are the key terms that I will be using throughout this. Sorry. Okay. So this is the content of my presentation. So I will try my best to explain latest research on participatory governance after I highlight some of the key terms that I'll be using. And then I will get a little bit deep into the latest theoretical and empirical research of participatory governance. The focus, of course, is not to explain each and every aspect of the participatory governance research, but to touch various dimensions of participatory governance scholarship in the developing world. And the third part will, I think it's somehow related to my own on research in recent times. So I'll try providing some of the examples of how some developing countries, including, of course, Nepal, are introducing participatory policy responses to manage the adverse impacts of COVID-19. And the fourth part will summarize. This is one of the recent work that I have been engaged with. As Professor Elvia already mentioned, that I'm in Nepal currently working on this project. And I will try my best to summarize the research on Nepal's participatory policy making at the local level. So in addition to analyze what Nepal's or how Nepal's local policymaking process works, I'll try my best to summarize or show some of the findings of the research that I have already actually submitted to the journal. And the final part will then bring some of the evidence on how the participatory governance practice is adversely impacted in many developing countries by this very tiny virus. So let's move into it. So as you can see, there are three different terminologies which seem very interrelated to each other. Participatory governance is conceptualized as a mechanism of government in which stakeholders of certain issue gather together with an aim to increase ownership of decisions. This is very brief, and I have been using this terminology for over 5 or 6 years, and I'm quite convinced with this particular definition. Different disciplines define the notion of participatory governance differently. For example, natural resource management literature contends that the beneficiaries must be able to participate in preserving and protecting natural resources while ensuring sustainable use of such resources. Similarly, in development economies, they study participatory governance with the aim to have the view of stakeholders in the formulation of development plans, framing of macroeconomic framework, and of course, implementation of the developmental works. Similarly, political scientists highlight the fact that ordinary citizens deserve to participate in each and every aspect of the public affairs that they think can influence their lives. Coming back to the second point, where citizen participation and public participation is there, of course, it sounds similar, but the literature on both of these field has regarded public participation as a broad participation of citizens. In certain issues, voting can, for example, be regarded as public participation. In contrast, citizen participation is examined slightly as a technical term, referring the participation of most affected publics who deserve to participate in the issues that potentially impact them. So engagement, I think I don't need to highlight or get more detail into it because the journal itself has published, I think, about hundreds of articles already, and we also don't need to talk about who the developing countries are. So this, I think, should work as the crux of my presentation today. These 4 points will try to bring together the latest development in the field of participatory governance in developing countries. The participatory governance, of course, is a very broad subset of governance theory, as many of you know, with deep connection to citizen participation in decision making, citizen engagement in policies, and public deliberation in public affairs. So several classification and categorization help us to understand the theoretical underpinning of participatory governance. In recent times, scholars and practitioners of social policymaking, democracy, and economists have contributed in advancing the theories of participatory governance. Bottom-up approaches, for example, to decision-making, coupled with citizens' democratic right to participate in such processes, have been in the foreground of such theories. Again, I'm just repeating the thing that I'm not going to get into detail about these theories, but what I'm trying to say is that several dimensions of participation engagement are informing the advancement of theory. Importantly, however, theoretical advancements on the particular field of study is informed by the theoretical developments in other disciplines such as economics, democracy, and natural resources, to name a few. So what I'm trying to explain in here is that the participatory governance theory in developing countries is very lucky to have been informed by other insights from other disciplines, particularly from the development economics, urban policy making theories, and political science and policy studies as well. So in terms of empirical evidence, as you can see on the slide, on the third point, the literature on participatory governance in developing countries is already rich. The participatory budgeting in the city of Porto Alegre in Brazil, for example. Similarly, the participatory planning campaign in Indian state of Kerala, Professor Pushpesh Kumar might have more knowledge about that. And many citywide local budgetary processes in Indonesia, the Philippines, and even in China are contributing with a range of empirical insights to the studies of participatory governance in developing countries. The particular focus of such evidence is on institutional design, participants, and countries. So the particular focus, is to what extent the institutions and processes are conducive to offer participation opportunities to the ordinary people. So I'm not saying that elites also definitely participate there, but the evidence that we have been seeing in the last couple of decades is that the institutions and processes are designed in a way that ordinary people who do not have any political affiliation, any social affiliation, can directly participate in the making of local policies and budget. I'm pretty sure that many of the audiences have witnessed fast-growing interest on the COVID-19 centric research on citizen engagement in recent times. We have been seeing a kind of proliferating mass and scale of research in relation to COVID-19. So many successful countries such as New Zealand, Australia, Germany have shown that ordinary people are actively participating, dealing with the management of coronavirus-induced social and economic chaos. So as many of you already know, that the ongoing pandemic is not possible to manage only by public health experts, but ordinary citizens have greater roles in inter alia managing quarantines, isolation centers, encouraging people to maintain social distancing norms, broadening public health awareness programs to the neighborhood levels. And as soon as the vaccine is developed in the future, I hope, again, the role of ordinary people will be expanded to help vaccine volunteers to reach out to communities. So the concern here, therefore, is to see how far the participatory policies in developing countries are designed for those, this unprecedented civic engagement activity. So I have tried my best to gather some of the policy responses from different developing countries, and I found out three important insights onto this particular thing. The first one is jurisdictions matter. So the evidence on policy responses to COVID-19 is, of course, still in its infancy. This limits our ability to reach to any conclusion, of course. Countries with relatively strong policy responses, such as Australia and New Zealand, they are experiencing recurring waves of coronavirus at the moment. But the policy responses that they have created in the very beginning of the outbreak of the virus seems to have impacted, or at least positively impacted, the management of the virus in those countries. Whereas some countries, such as Sweden, with comparatively loose policy responses, I'm saying loose because they were not that much fascinating in imposing lockdowns and other social distancing norms in the very first place, and they are showing how successful they were in beating the virus, and it's somehow impressive. So it is quite hard to presume what policy measures work better than the other. I'm not saying that participatory policies would be the best option to manage the adverse impact of the virus in communities, particularly in terms of social and economic impact. But they are some of the, as the sum of the evidence shows, that they are very successful in helping managers, politicians to deal with the impact of the virus. Nevertheless, three key aspects of policy responses are worth mentioning in here. First is about the jurisdiction. So what I'm trying to say by saying jurisdiction is that federal countries with strong local autonomy seem to have been good in managing the adverse impacts of lockdowns and social distancing. Countries such as Pakistan have devolved much authority to provincial government, which has resulted in, inter alia, strengthening provincial participatory institutions. The German experience of local governance in managing the social and economic impact of the virus is also praiseworthy. So here, the point is that the federal governance structure or the jurisdiction seems to be more effective in managing the negative impact of the virus. But I'm not saying that other countries are not successful. But the implication of autonomy, particularly at the local level, is somehow useful in managing quarantines and isolation centers. And the second aspect of the policy response is, or it relates to how governments take scientific advice. So we have seen in many countries that countries with robust policy advisory systems, such as Canada and the UK, are continuously showing policy success, whereas countries with weak linkage between policymakers and scientific advisors seem to have lagged behind. The final aspect of policy response is, which I think is very much related to our webinar today, is how well the governments are incorporating citizen engagement in COVID-19 centric policies. I think most of us are aware of how engagement policies are urgent in the times of this pandemic. Let me get into the other one. So this is what I have been doing for last 5-6 years. So this is an institutional design of a participatory policy making process at the local level in Nepal. As you can see, there are 9 different stages, steps performed in 3 different stages. For the last 4 months or so, I have been closely watching the operationalization of participatory policy making and budgeting at the local level in Nepal. As part of the annual policy and budget making process, local governments in Nepal must go through a participatory planning process, which involves multi-stage consultative and deliberative forums. So as you can see in the picture in the slide there, so there are three different stages. So 3 different stages involve certain consultative and deliberative forums. In principle, these diverse forums inherit several elements of citizen engagement through informal, semi-formal, and formal procedures. So my findings, I'll try my best to quickly perhaps finish my. Elvia, do I have much time now?
You
Sure.
still have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I'm that was quick. Thanks. So my findings suggest that there are three different and very interesting findings relevant to this ongoing pandemic. The first one is the mayor's power. So those mayors who generally do not see the need to have voice of ordinary people in the making of local public policies find the pandemic as a pretext. So I'm not generalizing this one because this should sound a little bit harassing to some of the politicians. But what I'm trying to say is that some politicians were trying to dodge, not to go to communities to have their views. So for them, this pandemic is a great thing because it has limited their ability to go into communities, to have consultation and deliberation in communities. So this, as I think the German chancellor somewhere said in July, that this pandemic should not work as a pretext to avoid democratic rights of citizens. So I'm a little bit worried as a scholar of participatory governance that this virus will limit the ability of and interest to citizens of different types in engaging in the making of local public policies. And the second finding that I found throughout my research is that new norms such as social distancing and lockdowns have severely impacted the willingness of local officials, as well as the aspirations of ordinary people to participate in the making of local policies. So when people would have been given access to and right of participating in the process of making local public policies, they would have something to say about how the impact of virus would be defeated or at least managed. So this pandemic has actually downsized or downgraded the right of the citizens to participate in the making of local public policies. I think this has undermined the democratic right of citizens in a way. And the third finding from my research is that the virus itself is not, however, the cause of such frustration on citizen engagement. So far, I just talked that the virus has given some leverage to some policy makers or politicians to dodge, not to go to communities, or it has given a limited access to citizens of different types in participating in the process. But the virus itself is not the cause. There has been the existing institutions and processes that were designed in accordance with the setting of representative democracy. That also causes, I think many of the scholars, including Harold Patman, John Dryzek, and others have been consistently saying that the institutions and processes that have been designed to offer participation opportunities to citizens of different types in the making of local public policies or local decisions are actually causing some kind of hindrances for ordinary people. Because what happens in reality is that representatives, particularly who are elected, have the ultimate role to make decisions. Even though they offer participation opportunities to people of different types in the making of local public policies, they still have to go through those representatives. In some countries, for example, also in Nepal, there is a different route of representation. They do not have to go through elections or party-based competitions. Sometimes there are representative community institutions, such as the toll lane organizations in many different municipalities in Nepal. So the point here is that representation cannot be avoided, but there is a concern for over many decades that political scientists are actually a little bit curious about how the limitations of representative democracy can be not undermined, but can be addressed properly to help ordinary citizens to participate in the making of decisions that affect them. So the conclusion is that the impact of coronavirus on citizen engagement is utterly negative, as Professor Puspesh Kumar also highlighted some aspects on that. I would also support the argument that the state of citizen engagement is going to be somehow negatively impacted in the days to come, probably in the next couple of years, 2 years or 3 years. But having said that, there is a chance for large-scale reforms on participatory institutions and processes so that in the future, I think people will be able to utilize digital devices as part of the citizen engagement tool. I think Tiago and others have been tirelessly working on this scholarship. They have been arguing that the usage of digital platforms will definitely help boost the possibility of ordinary people to participate in the making of local public policies. The other concern is that the anti-participatory school of thought is on the rise, as I just mentioned a minute ago, that some politicians and policymakers are taking this virus as an opportunity to not to go to communities because they think are the true representatives of community people, and that's why they do not need to go there. So this is somehow related to a populist democratic approach. I think Nicole Curator and others from the Philippines have been working on this particular aspect, which I think is very important. And we should be very, very aware of how and to what extent anti-participatory school of thought is going to be on the rise. And the final point I would like to raise is that the state of participatory governance, therefore, in developing countries seems to be somehow, in terms of quality, downgraded. So this is somehow frustrating news in every aspect: social aspect, humanitarian aspect, political aspect, and everywhere. And the impact of the virus on participatory governance in developing countries, therefore, is going to be negative. So this is what I wanted to share in just given 20 minutes time. I think we have some more time to talk more about what I just presented. I'm always happy to get your feedback, questions in my email, as you can see, and I can be followed on Twitter as well, so we can have more conversation on this particular aspect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tanes. That is so useful. Before Diva is preparing for the questions, could you please maybe stop share? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Before Diva is going to put the questions to you, we do have 5 questions. Can I also ask questions to you? Is that okay?
sure, of course. Yeah.
With the giving a chance for the community to participate in terms of the policy issuance discussions, how about to make a good balance between gender? And that is what my question is, because this is another issues that apparently gender do not have the same equal rights to participate in terms of governance and policies. Can you please explain about to make that good balance between the two?
Thank you. I think it's very important question. I think my internet connection is unstable at the moment, but I hope you are hearing me.
Yes.
So the aspect of gender in terms of citizen participation in local policy making in Nepal, I would like to say something about what happens in Nepal. So during my field study in between 2014 to 2017, I had found that the average ratio of participation of women was actually higher than the participation of men in the making of local public policies. So
Mm.
in the municipalities where I conducted my research, I saw many women were actually not only passively participating, but also participating in a way that they would raise their concerns uh, very comparable to their men counterparts. So in Nepal, there doesn't seem to be any problem for women to participate in the making of local public policies. But I cannot say whether this happens in other countries. But generally speaking, I think there is no limitation for women to participate in such processes. The reason why women were more participating in the process was that I had a question in mind at that time as well, that many men, oh, dads perhaps, or husbands were going outside for work in official settings. Maybe they were doing some business or whatever, and that's why they did not have
Mm.
enough time to come back to the consultative and deliberative forums organized by the municipality. So women were actually given the right time to participate in the afternoon in those consultative and deliberative forums. So the other logic of why women were there was that there was a provision in some municipalities in Nepal that at least one member from one household must be participating in those processes. So when men were not there in the house, definitely women would go there. Yes, this is what I found. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So you do have 5 questions here, Tanesh, or 6 questions now. You may choose
Okay.
which one that you want to talk first. Can you see
Or
the
I need to read.
screen?
Yes, I
Yeah.
can. Yes, I can see that. So with the first one, as Murthy says, what strategy participatory local government in developing countries? Well, this is very generic question, and there is no shortcut answer and specific answer to this question. But remember that there are at least 3 to 4 different strategies that have been in place at the moment. So, for example, the political strategy would say that citizens have got the right to participate in the local decision-making process. So that can be regarded as a political strategy, and that also inherits some of the aspects of democracy theory. So citizens of any country have the right to participate in the policy-making process. Nobody can actually stop them from being participated, or in some liberal democracies, people have got the right to influence the policymaker. So, in other words, there is no shortcut to say what strategy in particular is in place. We can discuss more on that, Murthy, later on. The second one is, what is the biggest impact from COVID-19 in your country? Well, as I said in my presentation, it is still in its infancy. We do not have much evidence by now. But I think the economic impact is far ahead than other impacts. Of course, there are about more than 400 people died of the virus, and I think about there are more than 32,000 active cases in Nepal. So, sorry, Rahmadani, I do not have exact answer to your question as well now. Coming to the third one, can you give us some advices to save our economy from recession? I'm not the expert of economics, so I cannot say much about the recession. But yes, of course, I can. What I can say is that the more you offer participatory opportunities to citizens in the making of macroeconomic frameworks at different levels of the government. If it is your federal country, then you have to give access to ordinary people in the making of local policies in the local government, and similarly in the provincial or state governments, and so on. So there is no specific answer from my side at this moment, but thank you very much for that question. I think it's very important. Coming back to Adelina's question, there is an upcoming government election in Indonesia. Do you think that we should, pending the occasion due to COVID-19 pandemic? Well, this is very interesting, and many countries actually have been exercising this practice already. For example, New Zealand has postponed their election. In the US, there is a debate about whether they should continue with the election. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel has been consistently saying that we should not be taking this pandemic as a pretext to dose some of the democratic exercises such as the election. So I do not have definite answer to your question, but of course there should be some public health concerns in mind. Coming to the fifth one, Fasha Putri says, do you think that social distancing and wearing masks is a great way to prevent people from getting infected by COVID-19? Since in Indonesia, a lot of people is already doing that, but the positive case number of COVID. Okay, so this is again not the area where I can answer the question properly. But what I can say from the citizen engagement or participatory governance perspective is that citizens can actually inform their friends, their neighborhoods, and the policymakers at the local level to effectively implement social distancing rules. They also can help people to increase the awareness about washing hands and so on. So, as I said, that I'm not the expert in this particular area, but I can say that if we introduce the measures, the participatory measures to handle this problem, we definitely will be able to minimize the impact on society as well as in the economics of the country. The sixth one, will we reach a better economic condition with this within this year? Okay, again, this is related to pandemic. I wonder whether many of the audiences were regarding my presentation is on COVID-19. Probably I wasn't being able to clarify my presentation. But again, the thing is that the impact of COVID-19 on citizen engagement as well as on participatory governance is generally negative.
Negative.
So generally negative or adverse, in other words. So the economic condition, of course, will depend upon how the country will introduce what do you call it, the austerity measures or other economic measures to handle. So there is no definite answer to 6 of these questions from my side.
Okay. In terms of governance perspective, is it getting more challenging because of the pandemic, the global pandemic, in terms of that governance perspective?
Yes, of course. Challenge in terms of um, how the governments are introducing measures to manage the impact. So many of the government institutions were not actually ready and prepared to deal with the impact of the virus. So many governments have to create new institutions and a new way of making decisions. And as we have been seeing in many advanced countries, such as in the US, see, the public health experts are in place. I mean, they have been uh, in the foreground of the decision-making processes. The scientists, the political scientists are slightly going backwards, and public health experts are coming in the foreground to advise the government about what should be done, not only in terms of managing the immediate impact of the virus, but also introducing public sector institutions
Hmm.
in
Okay.
such countries.
Okay. Good. Thank you. We do still have about 7 minutes, and then maybe Ashar, you can open maybe questions to the audience, and if you can raise your hands, or maybe put it in the chat box if you want to raise questions to Tanesh, please do so.
Bu Elvia, I already checked the Google form and there is like several questions, but I'm moving it to the Word.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm gonna need like 1 minute and I'm gonna present it.
Or maybe you can read it if you want.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm just gonna read it. This is, oh, wait a minute. This is from Rizka Melani. She asked from government side how to encourage and convey the citizen participatory, but at the same time to filter out which parts of participatory is purely come from the citizen for their goodness and not from any certain parties who write on the citizen.
I think I did not understand the questions properly. So can it be typed somewhere?
Okay, okay, I'm already typing it. I'm gonna show the screen to you.
So
Yeah, please.
sometimes Tanesh, you know that with the participatory, there is we face a kind of a challenging issues.
Yeah.
They act not on behalf of the community, but they act on behalf of their own party. So how do
Oh,
you
okay.
make this?
Yes.
Yes. So
I
this how
think
do you make?
that's what she actually meant with the question.
Yeah. Okay. So not talking on behalf of the whole community, but just because maybe there's a bit of a conflict of interest there. So then how do you solve these issues?
I think this is what is generally known as elite participation in the making of local public policies. So, in many developing countries, the is it the number 8 question? Who is
Number
most
7.
number 7? From government side, how to encourage and convey the citizen participation at the same time to filter out which parts of participation purely come from citizens and from any. Oh, okay, okay. So now I got it. I'm sorry for that. So the thing is that there is a notion of elite participation, which many of the scholars in the participatory governance field uh, actually have been worried about. Those elite participants are trying to minimize the presence and voice of ordinary people in the making of local public policies. So political influence of the participation in such processes actually is impacting so much. And that's exactly why there are a range of institutional designs that help filter which parts of participation is purely come from citizens. Okay, so and that's exactly why many governments nowadays are designing that certain policy areas must be open up for citizens, but not all policy areas. For example, if it is a national security issue, I think we cannot open the space for ordinary people to participation for the participation. So industrial interest of companies or from government political position. So it again matters on the issue to be deliberated So, for example, in my case, the issues are very broad. So there doesn't seem to be any specific issue. So yes, the answer to this question again is not that much definite.
Okay, there is these are the two questions. So um is it Ibu Hidayatur Rahmi? Did you get the answers, Ibu?
Number one,
Um
is it number 8?
yeah. Have you addressed this?
Not yet. So who is the
Okay, okay.
most responsible to make citizen engagement in making public policy? The community themselves, the government, or the representative? Based on your research, which developing country has better experience? Oh, okay. So this is very interesting question. So again, the design of the institution, the participatory institution matters, because if the institution does not offer an open window for people to participate in the process, then it's not going to be regarded as purely a participatory process. So who is the most responsible one to make engagement possible is the political leaders at the local level, and also sometimes at the provincial level. So if they do not open up spaces for citizens to participate, then of course the overall opportunity is lost. And that's exactly why many of the political scientists in the deliberative democracy theory have been consistently raising that even if there is no open space from the government side, the NGOs, sometimes the communities themselves can organize such consultative and deliberative forums. So it again depends upon what kind of institution and process is there to design. The second one of the same question is what is the role of perhaps community or government or representative? Of course, the community people have much say in the design of the process. So if they deny to participate in the process organized by the government entity, then it does not work. So it is a combination of the work between community people themselves, the government employees, and also the political representative. Coming back to the third point of the same question, I do not have any specific answers to this question, but as you might have seen in many countries, particularly in India, in the Indian state of Kerala, participatory budgeting in many Brazilian municipalities, such as in the Porto Alegre, there are very good successful case examples in the developing world. There are very good examples even from China and South Korea. So based on my research, I would not say that this particular country A has better experience than the country B. But what I'm trying to say is that there are several lessons that we can learn from different countries. And Brazil is in the foreground. And Graham Smith, in his book, says that what happens in general is that many developing countries listen to what advanced countries have practiced in the past. So this is a general trend. But because of these participatory processes, many advanced countries, such as Canada, have been learning from developing countries. So this is a reverse learning process, as he says in his book. So in other words, what I would like to highlight here, and perhaps it is going to be very, very contended, that many developing countries have better experience in citizen engagement than developed countries. So this is what I can say, and I acknowledge that this is going to be contended.
Thank you. We are just in time. Your time is so well
Okay.
managed, and I do appreciate
Yeah.
for the last two questions. That was really great. That were really great questions out of these two, and thank you so much. For those who asked the questions, the paper will be there in our journal for our next publication. So here, tune in, and then it will be published in our journal to get a complete thoughts and complete reviews about these topics. Thank you so much, Tanesh, and we would like to move on to the next speaker, if you don't mind. Okay, thank you. So, and then our next speaker.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, and
So I
thank you
give.
everyone.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Muhammad Hassan Raza from Missouri State University, time is yours now, and you do have 20 minutes to give the lecture and then 15 minutes for questions and answers. Time is yours.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? I hope you are staying well and healthy. Thank you so much for having me. In this seminar, I am going to present one of my research studies, which is social justice and community development, a new multi-level community engagement model to effectively work with families living in culturally diverse communities in Pakistan. So this is my copyright statement. Let me give you a brief background information about Pakistan. Pakistan has a population of 208 million. And among these 208 million people, 132 million people are living in rural areas, whereas 76 million people are living in urban areas of the country. So that's why overpopulation has been a serious problem for the country. Pakistan is the 5th most populous country of the world. A labor force consists of 77% men and 23% women. Social sector that emphasizes on community development has been facing many challenges. And these challenges include lack of funding and inadequate coverage for initiative towards community development. Relevant departments and non-government organizations lack sufficient training and resources to work with vulnerable communities. There are also insufficient scientific inquiries and lack of data to support and develop community-level projects. And as a result, target communities receive insufficient services and information when they need it, that negatively affect community development. So what I did in my current study, I basically critically examined my studies that I already conducted, and they are published in peer-reviewed scholarly journals. So you can see the full citations of the 3 studies that I conducted. And I am not going in the details of these studies, but I will share with you what I did for the current study. So I conducted a secondary examination of these 3 studies, and I tried to find out the commonalities across these 3 studies because they were conducted in the same geographical area and the population was the same. So therefore, I found a consistency in terms of data. So these are some of the commonalities that I found among these studies. The intersections of class, gender, education, and disability made community members more vulnerable compared to their counterparts. So, for example, those families which belong to a low socio-economic status, they became more vulnerable in natural disaster. In addition, those families which had a female head of the household, they also experienced challenges in natural disaster. And when we intersect class with gender, those families which had low socioeconomic status and they also had a female-headed household, it put them in more vulnerable situation. Community members showed a lack of knowledge and awareness about public policies and programs that are relevant and responsible to provide assistance in natural disaster. So when community people, they need help and they want to seek some help in natural disasters, they don't have the awareness and they don't have the knowledge and accessibility to the relevant department as well as those policies or programs that are responsible to assist them in that situation. Despite all these challenges, communities have wisdom, local knowledge, and expertise for which they should be recognized. So although community members were facing difficulties, they were trying to utilize their local knowledge and expertise to find out some solutions through which they can face this challenge of natural disaster. The collaboration, coordination, and communication among stakeholder groups, including target communities, was insufficient. So target communities which were vulnerable, they were also not accessing the relevant departments or programs, and those relevant agencies which were supposed to help them, they were also not reaching out to the vulnerable communities. The representation and recognition of community voices was lacking. So these communities, as I explained, that community people, they have the local knowledge and awareness, they have the problem, but at the same time they know the solution. But in community projects, particularly in decision-making processes, their representation was lacking. So after finding out these commonalities across my studies, I tried to understand these findings, and I tried to explain it to myself what these findings mean. So what I did, I used 3 theoretical frameworks to understand and explain these findings. So I will only explain the fundamental idea of these 3 theoretical framework that I use for my study, or that I use to explain these findings. Family systems theory, according to family systems theory, a family is a system, and its members are interconnected, such that if one member is affected, it affects the other members and the whole family as a system. Therefore, it is important to examine families or to study families as a system instead of focusing on different individuals of the same family separately. Participatory action research that empowers communities, that encourages local knowledge and expertise, that minimizes power differences between practitioners and community people, and that fosters community engagement and development. Ecological systems theory, according to this theory, so there are 3 versions of this theory. I am using the first version. There are different ecological systems. So individuals' development are influenced by different ecological systems which are located at different levels of human ecology. These systems, they are interrelated with each other. They can influence individuals. Individuals can also function as an active agent of their own change, and therefore they can also influence these ecological systems. So this is a precise description of these theoretical frameworks. So these are the answers I found after using these frameworks to understand the findings, the commonalities that I found from my studies. All family members should be involved in community initiatives, regardless of age and gender. So in Pakistan, there are more traditional gender roles. Men are more likely to participate in those activities which are carried out outside of their families. So consequently, they are more resourceful. So here, what I am saying that when we will make the whole family inclusive, and we will include the whole family regardless of age and gender, it will basically make women and children more resourceful. Power hierarchies should be minimized between practitioners and community members in community-based programs or projects. So when practitioners or researchers, they will work with communities and they will work like a learner. They will show learning attitude. They will learn from community, and community will learn from them. So it will decrease the power hierarchies between them. Community context and cultural diversity among families should be acknowledged within and between stakeholders, stakeholder groups. So each family is unique and diverse. Therefore, it is important to understand the context of these families, because they are diverse and unique. For those stakeholders which are involved in a particular intervention or project. Learning process should be inclusive, fair, and equitable, such that local knowledge and expertise can be recognized and utilized for community development. So obviously, when there will be a collaborative process, community member as well as practitioners, they will show learning attitude, they will share their knowledge, they will learn from each other, so the relationship will be more fair and equal. That will lead to community development. A strong collaboration, consistent coordination, and open communication is needed within and between different engagement levels among all involved and relevant stakeholders, including target communities. So as I explained, that individuals' development is influenced by different ecological systems. So these stakeholders are located at different engagement levels. And where they are, they have the potential to influence the target communities. So therefore, there should be a collaboration and open communication within and between these stakeholders among different engagement levels, including the target communities. So now, after finding out these answers, I thought about the solutions. So I thought how I can fulfill these gaps or I can address these gaps. So in order to achieve that goal, I came up with this model. So this is the first time this model is live and you are seeing this model. It is called multi-level community engagement model. So I will briefly explain this model. So you can see here, there are 3 different levels that I developed for this model. Level 1 is proximal level. At level 1, you can see these are the stakeholders, families, community-based agencies, such as implementing agencies, other relevant agencies which are working on the same issue, social activist groups, and in this OL, you may have different groups of stakeholders because it depends on the context of community and society. So at the first level, these are the stakeholders and they have a reciprocal relationship. You can see this bidirectional arrow that is connecting families and community-based organization. This is the second level and it is influential level. So here donor agencies are located. For example, in Pakistan, most of the donor agencies offices, they are located in the capital city or in the provincial, at the provincial level. Then at the second level, media and government institutions. So those who design policies, they are usually located at the provincial and federal levels, and media offices and their platforms, they are also at the provincial or local level. So these two groups, they are also have reciprocal relationships with each other. The third level is holistic level. So areas of diversity can change from society to society and from context to context. For example, in some society like Pakistan, religion is one of the important areas of diversity, because Pakistani people, they have strong religious beliefs. Class is another area of diversity. Gender, place of residence are some of the areas of diversity. So as I said, these areas of diversity can differ based on society, based on community. So this model, what I am saying through this model, that at the federal level, there can be national forums. There can be national religious forums, particularly that have the representation from each sect across the country. So because I can also share one of my studies, I found out in one of my studies that the religious perception of women does not predict their contraceptive use, but it is the role of religious leaders or scholars, how they teach them about the use of contraception, that predicts contraception practices for women in Pakistan. So that's why through this model, I am suggesting that if there will be national religious forums, that will help in smooth implementation of development projects or any type of projects across the country, because they can interact with their own people and they can basically help in the smooth implementation. Culture refers to cultural groups. So if there will be national cultural forums at the national level, because there is a lot of diversity in the country. Each province, they have their own language, their food, and the way they live. So if these national cultural forums can have representation from each ethnicity, and when these projects will be implemented in different parts, these ethnic groups, they can go and they can interact with their own people, and it will help in smooth implementation of the project. So now these two groups of stakeholders, they also have reciprocal relationships with each other. So as you can see here, what I am saying, these groups of stakeholders, they have reciprocal relationships with each other, and these groups which are located at 3 different levels, and these levels also have reciprocal relationships. So you can see there is a reciprocal relationship from level 1 to level 2, from level 2 to level 3, and from level 3 to level 1. So these groups of stakeholders, they have reciprocal relationship, and these levels, they also have reciprocal relationship according to my model. So here you can see time.
Dr. Raza, I just want to remind you that we do have 1 more minute for you to wrap up, if possible. Right. Yes, so, sorry about
that. S time, it refers to socio-cultural time, and H time refers to historical context. So this is socio-cultural context, this is historical context. So precisely the dynamics of these groups of stakeholders and their reciprocal relationship with each other can be changed by socio-cultural context and historical context. So this is a precise description of my community engagement model. So these are the strengths very precisely. The takeaway of this slide is that my model is grounded in research. So I used empirical research that I conducted, and I use scientific theories which are also tested. So this model is scientifically grounded. And this model has the tendency to be transferred and applied in different countries and cultures and societies. So it is broader enough that can be applied to other societies. At the same time, it is specific to a certain extent that can be measurable and testable as well. So this is basically a precise explanation of this slide. So limitation, obviously, it is a new model. So I grounded it in limited research. So I will have to do more research in my future to find the evidence that I can use to support my model. And I use deductive approach to develop this model. Obviously, it can be considered a limitation as well as a strength as well.
Okay.
Oh, all right. So this is, I am almost done. So implication for research, MCEM has the potential to be transformed and applied in other countries, societies, culture. Thus, it could help development agencies work effectively with families living in culturally diverse communities in Pakistan and around the world. This is the conclusion. MCEM uncovers important insights about the complex dynamic and reciprocal interactions among different groups of stakeholders at different engagement levels that fosters community engagement and development. So these are the references that I used for this presentation, and this is my contact information. If you have any additional questions, if you are interested in learning more about this model, please feel free to email me on this email address. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rasa. So I just want to clarify, so this model is driven by your data. So it's a data-driven model, or a grounded theory that you create. But how about with the three theories that you have explained earlier? So are you driven by the data and then you develop then it comes with the grounded theory, or is it inspired by the three theories that you have explained earlier?
So this model is deductively driven. So I developed this model deductively. I didn't use inductive approach. So I used my empirical research, what I conducted, and I used these theories which are already developed and tested. So I deductively drove this model. And obviously, I will use inductive approach in future when I will collect data to test this model.
Okay, good. That is clear. So Diva, is it possible for you to upload the questions? We do have 8 questions, Dr. Rasa. Maybe you can stop sharing and then Diva. Yeah, okay. Diva,
Yes,
can you share the questions?
Yes, yes. Is it already?
Not yet, not yet. Maybe it's a lag. There's a lack of sometimes, Yes. So, Dr. Rasa, feel free to choose which one that you want to answer.
So my question to you are, is the divorce increasing rate due to COVID-19 effect on family financial conflict? How do you see the problem in family studies? So here they are asking, as the divorce increasing rate due to COVID-19 effect on family financial conflict, how do you see the problem in family study? So this is basically not relevant to this particular presentation, but I am happy to answer this question because it is related to my area. What is your solution to those divorced couples and their kids who decided to separate each other. So this is again a part of that question. So it is not directly relevant to my presentation, but feel free to email me because I teach family studies and relationships dynamics among different family structures. So I would be definitely happy to answer these questions. Is there any assertive law from government to encourage the engagement of women in the community, as it seems an act from outside the community itself to try to break the culture, and it is likely the government is most possible to take these actions. So is there any assertive law from government to encourage the engagement of women in the community? So I, based on my limited knowledge, I don't know about any law that basically forces them to engage in these development activities. These social organizations, basically they mobilize them and they encourage them to participate in community development projects and initiatives. As it seems an act from outside the community itself to try to break the culture, and it is likely the government is the most possible to take. So this is basic, that's what this model is offering, that you need to be inclusive. So if somebody is coming from outside, he needs to show the appreciation of local knowledge and expertise. He needs to understand the context of the community, because each family is diverse, each community is unique. So when they will carry out this collaborative process and with the appreciation of local context, expertise and knowledge, they will learn from each other, and it will basically foster community engagement and development. So, and through this model, I am also engaging government agencies as well. I am also, because they can play a really important role. As you can see in my model, they are located at the influential level. They are less proximal compared to via families and community-based organization, but they are more influential because they can really smooth the implementation and provide appropriate infrastructures to these community-based organization or development organizations that will result in positive project outcomes. So can you increase? Can you go up a little bit? Bring it up.
Diva, can you move? Yeah.
Am I correct to presume that the best effective models produced when society comes as one discipline despite age and gender? When, for example, we separate the male and female or by age demographic, which has the strongest impact and why? This impact and why? So am I correct to presume that the best effective model when gender? So yeah, this model basically ensures the inclusiveness. It increases the fairness. It basically foster social justice, because what I am saying, instead of focusing on one person who is already resourceful, if you will bring all family members, including children and women, it will empower them. It will basically make them more resourceful. It will ensure the inclusiveness, and it will basically provide a chance to everyone to participate in community initiatives. So yeah, definitely this model basically encourages the inclusiveness regardless of gender and age. Has the can you please bring it up? The question number 4. Has the diversity of communities in ASEAN been well optimized to realize unity and peace oriented towards the advancement of civilization, especially in the Asian region. So the diversity of community in Asian have been well optimized to realize unity and peace oriented towards the advancement of civilization, especially in the Asian region. So I can, this model basically encourages to include diverse population. For example, there is diversity based on gender. So I can talk about in the context of Pakistan, women, they lack participation in social, political, economic domains, although the situation is becoming more encourageable, but it is becoming more positive. Still, there are disparities, and women, they are lacking empowerment. So there is always work to be done in terms of inclusion and in terms of diversity. That's why not only in Pakistan, this model is applicable around the world. And obviously I will find out more when I will conduct more research on this model, because as I said, in Pakistan, the areas of diversity are different compared to other countries. For example, here I can give you the example of the US. The areas of diversity which are more important, they are race, ethnicity, compared to Pakistan, where religion is more important area of diversity. So definitely more work is required. Question number 5, how to prevent the children from getting too attached to digital media during this pandemic? So this is not a relevant question, but I am happy to answer it because it is related to my area. Can you give more specific example of target communities? So target communities who are the direct beneficiaries of your project. For example, if I am focusing on women to increase their contraception practices, they are considered the target beneficiaries. And as I said, there are multiple groups of stakeholders, communities, they are the target beneficiaries. They are one of them, one of the stakeholders, but there are multiple stakeholders which are located at different engagement level. That's why this model basically uncovers this complex dynamic reciprocal interactions among these stakeholders group within and between these engagement levels. What can community do to solve their internal and external issues, especially with racism? Can their solution affect local public policy or maybe national public policy? What can community do to solve their internal and external issues, especially with racism? And can their solution affect local public policies or maybe national public policy? Internal and external issues. So basically, this model is offering the solution because it is encouraging the engagement of those who are vulnerable and those who are influential. So it is basically offering a forum where all groups, regardless of race, class, and gender, they get together, they are engaged, they have the opportunity to learn from each other and to share. That will basically increase the equal, I can say fair or adequate relations between these different groups, and obviously some are Though in terms of where they are coming from compared to the others, some have advantages, some are disadvantaged because of the social location they are coming from, because of the intersections of those social locations. So what this community engagement model is offering, let's come together. And it is, you can see, I am saying that there is a reciprocal relationship. There needs to be a reciprocal relationship. Family should have access to donor agency. They should access, they should know about public policy. They should have access to the government institution who are responsible to develop these policies. So this model is basically minimizing the hierarchies, and it is recognizing the voices of those who are minority, those who experience racism, and it is ensuring the inclusion that fosters community engagement and development.
Okay, Dr. Raza, so I think we are just in time to finalize this. Do you have one word or two words to finalize it? Do you still have any question, any points to raise?
uh, I think I just want to say that obviously this is a new model, and I will do additional research to find out evidence to support this model. And in any part of the world, if any development agency or any organization is interested in using or testing my model, I am happy to explain this model more, and to help them as a mediator to develop the collaboration within and between these levels among these stakeholders, that will basically ensure the sustainability. This model is basically helping practitioners and development agencies to achieve the sustainability, because most of the focus is now achieving sustainability. So when these all groups will be engaged, they will learn through the process, they will keep the skill, and they will utilize it in the future.
Okay.
So it will basically ensure the sustainability. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out on, you can email me on my email address. And if you are interested in learning more about my model, I am happy to conduct a webinar that would focus specifically on this model. So thank you so much again for providing me with this opportunity to share my research with you.
Okay, Diva and Mas Asar, how can we find out about the speakers' emails? Is it, have you shared somewhere the emails addressed?
But we will.
Yeah, can
I
you
haven't
share it
shared
in
it
the chat?
anywhere.
Maybe for Dr. Raza, can you please write it down, emails addressed?
Oh,
Because he
okay, okay.
already offered it.
I will put it on the chat.
Yeah. Okay, that's one thing. And
But
we
I'm sorry that my connection is a bit.
I
Yeah,
can
that's
show it.
fine.
I can quickly show, if you would like. I can quickly share the screen and show my email address if you would like.
Yes, yeah, sure.
All right.
Okay, Diva, I don't think we have enough time to raise questions for Professor Kumar.
So this is my email
Questions?
address.
Okay, good. Yes. Can you do this slideshow, please? Yes. Can you do this slideshow, please? For that one, yes. So those who are interested to have email address from Dr. Rasa, these are the email address from Dr. Rasa. I thank you so much. We just have one more minutes for our online seminar. So please, can you give a big applause to the three speakers, and by clapping your hands, then we give a kind of appreciations to these three distinguished speakers. We will have their papers hopefully by end of this year, otherwise beginning of next year in our publications, in our journals. So feel free to have access to the journals as well. Do you mind at the last moment turn on your camera and we take a picture together? Is that okay? So please turn on your camera. We do have 51 attendees. So please, and then yeah. So can you stop share? Whoever is holding this share? Okay, good. Thank you so much. I saw my colleagues, Dr. Sabah Hutajulu, Ibu Anggi. So I thank you so much from everywhere around the globe. Thank you so much. And Diva, are you willing to take a picture of the attendees, please?
Yes, I'm ready. If everyone is already turning on their camera.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think it's not everyone, but most of them has already turned their camera on. Is that fine if I take the
Yes.
picture now?
Sure.
Okay, so everyone please smile in 3, 2, and 1. Okay.
Thank you. And then another one, maybe another screen.
Okay. Yes. I'm gonna take in 3, 2, and 1. Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our distinguished speaker for Dr. Raza and Professor Kumar. Thank you and take care. And yes, appreciate for your attendance. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Yeah,
Have a
Bye.
good day.
Take care.
Thank you, Bu Elvia.
Bye.